Can you imagine Kamala Harris being president of the United States of America? Absolutely not. At least that's the prevailing sentiment amongst all of the people that I surround myself with, myself included. But it's almost as though they don't even believe that it's a possibility. Now, I will admit, the majority of the people that I surround myself with are conservative and they exhibit conservative values, but we do differ a little bit because, as you already know, within the Black community in a lot of our households, we've always been taught to vote Democrat just by default. Why? Because that's what our parents do. That's what we always have been taught. And although we have these conversations and we have these debates inside of our household on a regular basis, it seems like there's a generation of men and women that automatically believe that no matter what, we have to vote Democrat. And I don't stand for it. But that's an entirely different conversation. But the one thing that we all can agree on, overwhelmingly it almost seems like, and I know that this is anecdotal experience, but the one thing that we all can agree on is that Kamala Harris would be an absolutely terrible, and I mean terrible pick as far as being the president of the United States of America. As a matter of fact, so bad that I'm not even sure how she became vice president, but it largely depended on people that were supporting a narrative, especially within the Black community, that no matter what, we're always going to vote Democrat, liberal, even though the majority of us, it's changing a little bit, even though the majority of us do not exhibit liberal principles and we stand for what we stand for, and we always have been against whatever it is that we see being promoted in popular culture today: promiscuity, separation between church and state, smaller government. Absolutely against the whole idea of pushing this alphabet community agenda inside of our schools. And although I know that it's a lot of people that are participating in alphabet community activities, all you got to do is go to Atlanta and go to Houston. We've largely stood our ground in a general sense as far as what it means to be conservative. Now, despite that, there has always been this narrative that the Democrats have been for poor people or the middle class, and conservatives have been for rich people. But that's changing because people are now becoming more aware, more awake, and they're paying attention to how they're basically affected every single day with the decisions that's being made in our legislative branches. None of that can be pronounced any more than what we've seen in our borders. And I think that the top three things that people are complaining about or they're concerned about is what's happening as far as immigration in our country. Let's be clear. This is not asylum seeking. This is illegal immigration into our country. In addition to that, I think that people are really concerned with inflation or exactly how pay is affecting their lives, whether or not they can survive, whether or not they can have a roof over their head. That is absolutely a big deal, 100%. And last but not least, I don't even think that people are necessarily concerned about how much money is going over to Ukraine or Taiwan or Israel or anything like that. I think that people are largely, if you look at the long term, people are largely concerned about what type of lifestyle that their children will lead or whether or not they can even leave something to their children. But if we go back to the first thing that I named, especially with regard to the amount of immigrants that have been let into this country, they're saying that the number is somewhere between 15 and 16 million. I think it's exponentially more. And I'm going to get to how all of these sanctuary cities are suffering at the hands of what was supposed to be the border czar. What do you mean, Anton? What are you talking about? Border czar. Oh, you don't remember? Let me remind you that Kamala Harris was deemed the border czar by the Biden administration, but yet we just sweeping that under the rug. When Biden and Trump was debating at this recent debate, the thing that Biden kept dodging and he refused to answer was the whole idea of how he's handled immigration into this country. But no, Anton from antondaniels.com and the people that subscribe to the Millionaire Morning Show, we didn't forget. You know why? Because we covered it every single day. Every single day. We looked at what was happening over in Denver and we were paying attention. You know why? Because Denver was on fire. And it looked like the Carter from New Jack City. It absolutely was 100% in desolation. It was being destroyed by people that were coming into this country. And if it wasn't for Texas Governor Greg Abbott, who made sure that we was aware of what was going on down in Texas by making sure that everybody else felt in the pain, Yeah, I remember. New York, Eric Adams was clapping his hand as the migrants was getting off the bus saying, "We are a sanctuary city." And then Brandon Johnson over in Chicago, Mike Johnston, he was over there. Yeah, everybody was, oh, Karen Bass, absolutely, as they built a $164 million, $165 million permanent homeless camp for people to have affordable housing, $165 million, $600,000 per unit. It's crazy. It's absolutely insane. But I still have not forgotten. It was Kamala Harris, the border czar, who was supposed to be responsible of what was going on at our borders and securing our borders and making sure that you came in here legally. Now, I'm not against immigration, but I am for legal immigration, meaning that people should be checked. We don't know what's going on. There's people dying all over the country. They don't want to take any responsibility. But guess what? That was one of the questions that he absolutely dodged, and I think that Trump should have hammered home. We were so concerned about Biden's age that we didn't really pay attention to the fact that he had deemed Kamala Harris, her number one job inside of the White House was to make sure that she secured our borders and she got a bipartisan deal that was done, even though you don't need a bipartisan deal in order to ensure that the federal government are doing what they're supposed to do as far as making sure the people that come into this country are supposed to be here legally. She 100% dropped the ball. But I think that the bigger play, now that we having these conversations and it's coming to the forefront, that Biden absolutely is experiencing elder abuse, in my personal opinion. We seen what was happening during the debate. We knew that he wasn't all there. We see him reloading every single time that they ask him a pertinent question. How can he stand in front of some of the world's leaders and negotiate some of the biggest deals? And I think that the bigger question is who's really running the White House, but that's a whole nother conversation. We know that he's not there and he doesn't have all of his faculties, but I'm always looking at what is the big play in this thing? Like, Biden is not all there. He's still running for president of the United States of America. It's a major chance that he'll win because they say that he got over 81 million votes, the popular vote in 2020. And there's so many different people that's not necessarily even voting for Biden, they voting against Trump. If you ask most people and most liberals or people that vote Democrat, hey, why are you voting this way? And we know it's going to be a large majority of them that do so. They always say, or they can't necessarily name a policy that they agree with when it comes to who it is that they're voting for as far as Biden continuing to have another 4 years inside of the White House, but they 100% will tell you what they don't like about Trump. So they're not necessarily voting for Biden, they're voting against Trump if they decide to vote at all, because I know within the black community, we have a hard time getting people over to the polls and then being informed voters as a result of it, because they so used to talking points, it doesn't even matter. But I think that the bigger play, and this is just a theory of mine, right? I think that the bigger play is that they know that if Kamala Harris actually ran for president of the United States against Trump, she would absolutely get wiped out. And the only thing that they have to stand on is the fact that Biden, they not necessarily voting for him, but they voting against Trump. And so as a result of that, they have to keep him in office. It's very rare for you to ever see an incumbent, a Democratic incumbent, that did their first 4 years and then they don't run for another term. Whether they win or not is a whole nother conversation, but they don't run for another term, and that's why you see nobody challenge Biden. And with the Democratic National Convention coming up, it's really only one or two things that's going to happen. I think that either they're going to force him out, which that doesn't seem likely because Biden is an ardent, headstrong, I'm not dropping out type of guy, and it seems like he's going to see this thing all the way through. But either they would force him to drop out, which the only viable candidate after that is Kamala Harris, or I think the more likely conclusion of this thing is that if there's any chance or possibility that he wins, they're going to see this through. And I cannot see Biden actually going through for another 4 years and being successful at being president of the United States of America. Absolutely not. One thing that you can't fight is age. Old age, eventually, we all succumb to it. We all have to die one day. And the stark differences between Trump and Biden is vast. But if Biden is unable to finish his 4 years, then that means that Kamala Harris eventually by default becomes president of the United States of America, first woman and then first woman of color. And that's historic. And then they champion that and they leapfrog off of your emotions. And then they also throw a couple other things in there as far as abortion rights in order to play into your emotions, even though that's something that we can control of whether or not you want to open up your legs to somebody that you're not supposed to be having sex with in the first place. They play off of your emotions. They promote all of these things that's not vital to your lifestyle, because we do advocate for freedom of speech and then your ability to be able to choose for yourself, regardless of whether or not we conservative or not. We do respect your rights, but they're going to advocate for this, and then they leapfrog off of it and continue to push her and push this narrative into us continuing to vote for her and still stand on the Democratic plantation. But I'm not going for it. Absolutely not. Not even a little bit. One of the things that I do is I do have insight, and my ability to play all potential pieces and see where everything fits in, that's my specialty. I believe, and again, it's just a theory of mine, that eventually Kamala Harris will become president of the United States of America, or at least that's the play that they're trying to play in order to ensure that she eventually becomes the first woman of power to hold this seat and to be the leader of the free world. Stay woke, my friends.